Failure in battle hardened Negrin's resolve to save the Republic. One strategy was negotiation. The previous May, he had published a moderate 13-point declaration for victory. In reality, a hint that the war could be ended by mediation. Horrified by the sum of death and destruction, Negrin nonetheless remained determined that a democratic Spain should emerge from the ruins. His second strategy pursued the same democratic aims. If peace could not be negotiated, he would fight on, in the hope that a greater war between democracy and fascism would explode in Europe, a war which would engulf Spain's own conflict. But Franco would have no compromise. Total victory was within reach. He wanted nothing less. It was an ugly paradox for Negrin that as he saw it, only Hitler, Franco's ally, could save him. For it was Germany's continued expansionism which he hoped would touch off war in Europe. Then Negrin hoped that Britain and France would welcome the Spanish Republic as an ally. In 1936, Hitler had occupied the Rhineland with troops. In March 1938, the Germans marched into Austria. Now in September 1938, it was Czechoslovakia's turn. At Munich, the statesmen of Britain and France met Hitler and Mussolini to see if the peace could be saved. For the British and French governments, non-intervention in Spain had been one way of trying to postpone a conflict with Hitler. In spite of the blatant foreign aid to both sides in the Civil War, they were still clinging to this policy. Now came the news of the democracy's pact with Hitler. Once again, the Western democracies had chosen the path of appeasement. While Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, told cheering Londoners that it was peace in our time, Negrin faced the truth. Time was against him. When the Second World War came, it was to be too late to save the Spanish Republic. Munich also lost the Republic its only effective ally, Stalin. The Soviet leaders decided to change their whole strategy. Munich destroyed Stalin's policy of building an anti-fascist alliance, in which the Western democracies would stand together with Russia to block the expansion of Germany and Italy. Now Stalin saw himself isolated. To gain time, he was eventually to sign the Nazi-Soviet pact with Hitler. Now, as his anti-fascist alliance plan collapsed, Stalin's support for the Spanish Republic was abandoned. Hitler must not be provoked. Soviet aid to Spain dwindled. Hitler's policy towards Spain changed too, but in the opposite direction. Realizing nothing he did there would cause Britain and France to go to war, he dramatically increased his aid, now keen to end the Spanish War as quickly as possible. There was a huge increase in German military aid to the Nationalists. Franco had sent an urgent request for more weapons to clinch the Battle of the Ebro. In return, he agreed to grant Germany generous mining concessions in Spain, and he promised to pay the costs of the German Condor Legion. But Mussolini decided to reduce his aid to Franco. He accepted the proposal of the Non-Intervention Committee to withdraw foreign volunteers fighting in the Civil War. 10,000 Italians, nearly half the total in Spain, now embarked for home. Those who stayed continued fighting with the Nationalist army at the Ebro. Negrin also agreed that the foreign volunteers on the Republican side should be withdrawn. He was hoping that non-intervention by foreign powers might at last become a reality. The last grim stages of the Battle of the Ebro were still being fought, when, on October 29th, the international brigaders took their farewell. people of Barcelona showed their gratitude to these survivors of the 40,000 foreigners who had left their homes to fight for the Spanish Republic. The Pasionaria spoke proudly to the crowds. These men reached our country as crusaders for freedom. They gave up everything, their country, home and fortune, fathers, mothers, wives, brothers, sisters and children. And they came and told us, "We are here. Your cause, Spain's cause, is ours. It is the cause of all advanced and progressive mankind." The departure of foreigners hardly affected the Republic's fighting strength. They had mattered in the first days through their discipline and their message of solidarity, but they had not been militarily decisive. By now, the brigades were mostly manned by Spaniards. Most volunteers went home. Only brigaders from fascist countries had no home to go to. But the war went on. By mid-November, Franco had reconquered the ground he had lost to the Republic in the first 2 days of the Ebro offensive. Just before Christmas 1938, the Nationalists crossed the Ebro into Catalonia. The fresh aid from Germany had arrived and was proving decisive. The Nationalist advance was now meeting little resistance. By mid-January 1939, Tarragona had fallen. By the end of January, Franco was nearing Barcelona. The only party utterly united in determination to fight on were the Communists. They used much-needed warplanes to shower leaflets on Barcelona, urging the population to continue the struggle. But Negrín was playing a double game. Outwardly, he went along with the Communists. He had little choice. In secret, he pursued his search for a negotiated peace. But the whole political fabric of the Republic was beginning to fall apart around Negrín. Many resented his apparent sympathy with the hard communist line. The anarchists, whose dreams of revolution were dead, were still fighting, but they were fighting for a republic they didn't believe in. So were the Catalan nationalists, whose treasured autonomy had been eroded by the government's centralist line.
The Republic was no longer what it had been. The power of the Catalan government had been wiped out by Negrín, to such an extent that at one point I began to ask myself if I was doing the right thing to continue taking part in the fighting at all.
While the communists were trying to boast of public morale, others used their most brutal means to destroy it. For months now, Barcelona had been the target of bombing raids. The previous March, Italian bombers had battered the city in waves that kept coming for 48 hours. The port and the city centre had been particularly badly damaged. The air